Wow, I will put this coffee on this MacBook Air, which will surely keep it hot. This is Dennis, and today we're gonna talk about the biggest flaw in the newly updated MacBook Air, who is this device meant for, what are the alternatives, and what lies in the near future for ultra thin and light laptops. Apple has recently updated the MacBook Air, and it's a massive update. You now have 256 gigabytes of storage base, the newly 10th generation Ice Lake processors from Intel, the keyboard is great again, and it now starts from $1,000. Is it enough to make the MacBook Air a great thin and light laptop? In my opinion, it still falls short, unfortunately, of being a great product, mainly for one big overlooked flaw, which is the thermal design. If we focus ourselves on what it seems to me the most interesting CPU option, which is the i5-1030 NG7, yeah, what a name. This CPU can have very high performance, but it also generates a lot of heat in doing so, as much as 25 watts during synthetic benchmark or rendering. Therefore, the CPU in those tasks quickly reaches 100 degrees Celsius, and if this heat is not dissipated properly, it throttles itself, limits its performance, and therefore the heat generated in order not to go past this critical temperature. And yes, you guessed it. When it comes to thermal design, the MacBook Air is by far the worst of its relevant competitors, which by the way include the MacBook Pro, but more on that later. And to be fair, other ultra thin and light laptops also are limited by their thermal dissipation capabilities, but still the difference in sustained performance is massive. Reviewers and some other people generally dismiss this argument by saying, well, the Air was never meant to be a powerhouse or do this type of workloads, but I disagree that this is a valid justification. First of all, what a computer can or can't do should not be limited by a somewhat of a self-imposed restriction by the statement, well, the Air can't do serious work, but should be limited by technology and technology alone. So, the general consensus is that $100 is a worth price for the upgrade from the i3 to the i5, and you get about 30% of multi-core performance, and I agree with that. But just imagine this. A single heat pipe and some fins would grant you easily 30% of sustained performance. Heat pipe technology is definitely there. Isn't it much easier to put a heat pipe than invest billions of dollars in research and development to come out with more efficient CPUs? Comment down below what you think it's easier. And second, people forget that thermal performance of a computer goes down over time as fans and internals get dustier and the thermal paste gets less effective at conducting heat. All of this is exacerbated in summer or in a warm environment. More on that topic, any laptop gets significantly warmer when connected to an external screen, which is a nice thing to have for a 13-inch device at home, and I don't consider this to be a wild use case scenario at all. If thermals are sketchy the first day of use, picture your computer in 3 years with an external 4K monitor during summer. And let's go back to the MacBook Pro topic for a minute. There is not enough differentiations of the Pro and Air lineups. The only advantage the Air nowadays has over the Pro is the price. In fact, portability, for all intents and purposes, is basically the same. This is of course not taking into consideration any differences due to how recently one or the other lineup was updated. More on that later. The MacBook Air is still a good machine for certain use cases. In fact, it is a very snappy and responsive system, but its sustained performance is of course only as good as its thermal design, which is, as we know, abysmal. With this knowledge in mind, who do I think should buy the MacBook Air? The first type of people who comes to my mind are Swift developers. In fact, if you are looking for a thin and light, ultra portable and relatively cheap Apple device, you really can't go wrong with the MacBook Air. I suggest you to get the 16GB of RAM and i5 configuration for that task. Web developers are also a good category of people who will find themselves in a good spot with the MacBook Air. And for you, I think 8 GB of RAM are actually sufficient. These use cases generally don't need sustained performance, but short spikes of power and general system responsiveness. And you might ask, what if I'm a video editor? And I think that if your budget allows, go for the 16-inch MacBook Pro. That's an excellent machine. Otherwise, it's very recommended to just wait for this 13-inch MacBook Pro update. That device has way better thermals and a better screen as well. Having said that, the MacBook Air has actually very good integrated graphics, and if you use Final Cut, you will definitely be able to edit 1080p footage with ease, maybe even 4K. But sustained performance is actually important when you eventually export the footage, if you don't want to wait forever or put your laptop in the fridge. If you love the Apple ecosystem and you're looking for the cheapest laptop option to do everyday tasks like watching videos, sending mails and such, then the Apple MacBook Air is certainly appealing to you. Although I think that for the majority of people, the iPad is actually a better buy, and here's why. There are a number of advantages, such as the iOS apps and the Apple Pencil support if taking notes or drawing is your jam. Other than that, the iPad OS 13.4 has an impressive mouse and trackpad support, but considering the cost of a regular cover, a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard, which I would personally not buy from Apple, and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, it all adds up to an even higher cost than the base MacBook Air. If you don't care about desktop programs and you're not set on a laptop form factor, then I think the iPad unique advantages are worth it. Now let's say you are willing to wander out of the Apple offerings. Today there are a lot of great players into the premium ultra thin and light laptop space. Especially worthy of consideration is the overlooked fact that you can, and in fact should, undervolt your CPU if you go the Windows route. In fact, this can greatly optimize the performance of thermally constrained laptops. The most comparable laptops to the MacBook Air are, in my opinion, the Surface Pro 7 and Surface Laptop 3. Other than not offering Thunderbolt 3 support and being rather thicker than the Air, I think these Surface products are overall a better buy. The pricing and availability of the Surface product has great variation. You often can find them on sale, but you also can find certain configuration unavailable. Unfortunately, the base models come with 128 GB of storage, which I don't recommend. But just for the Surface Laptop 3, if you're able to find a compatible M2 2230 SSD, you can upgrade it yourself. It's very easy. And again, unfortunately, both Apple and Microsoft have insane markups for upgrade. In fact, 16 GB of RAM cost $200 and $300 respectively, although with the Surface you also get the i7 upgrade as well. This pricing for upgrades is insane, and this is the reason why having good base models is so beneficial to the consumer. If you plan to get 16 GB of RAM, you might as well consider an XPS 13 9300, an HP Spectre X36 13T, or the HP 13 Envy. The 16 GB of RAM upgrade costs $100 on the XPS and a reasonable $80 on the HP Spectre. Also, you can get a 4K OLED display on the Spectre, which I am a big fan of, although I'm definitely biased towards high resolution displays on small screens. I like to sit closer to the computer and have smaller text size, but for the majority of people, 1080p on 13-inch is definitely enough, and longer lasting battery life and lower price are definitely the better trade. Both the XPS and the Spectre have higher starting prices, but the difference gets slimmer once you factor in the upgrades. What if you don't need a laptop right now but can wait? The general advice is that if you don't need something, that it's better not to buy it, mainly because it creates unnecessary electronic waste. But let's say you will need a laptop, preferably as soon as possible. what is the best time to buy? Well, I think that the second half of 2020 will be a very good time to buy a laptop. There are 4 upcoming things that are relevant to what we discussed so far. So, first thing is of course the rumored 13-inch MacBook Pro update. So, if Apple makes it a little bit thicker in order for it to have the same thermal improvements as its bigger brother 16-inch head, updates the keyboard, puts 256 gigabytes of storage as space, and keeps the same $1,300 price, then I think the MacBook Pro will be the best ultra thin and light laptop on the market, period. The second thing is Intel's Tiger Lake, successor to the already excellent Ice Lake, and it will have massive improvements in the graphics department. Will it push the envelope of what thin and light laptops can do? We'll see, but it appears to be a very good generational leap. Speaking of Intel, the third point is Lakefield. Confused by Intel nomenclature, aren't we all? Well, it's technically not just a CPU, it's a SoC, a system on a chip. But what you need to know is that it targets even slimmer, passively cooled designs, as it will consume probably around 7 watts. It will not be as performant as the MacBook Air current offerings, and in fact it's in a weird spot when it comes to the Apple lineup. Something like the old 12-inch MacBook would have been perfect for it, but speculation is that Apple will probably do something like that with its own ARM processor. I don't think we're gonna see Lakefield in an Apple product, but nevertheless other companies might come out with very interesting devices with it. And finally, the fourth point is the upcoming Ryzen 4000 processors. As much as Intel will probably have the crown for ultra thin and light laptops, AMD Zen 2 chips will probably be the most performant and cheaper options when it comes to something that can dissipate over 20 watts of power. If you can live with a slightly thicker laptop, you will have much to gain in terms of performance and performance per dollar. So there you have it. Like if you like this long analysis, and sub if you want to see more content like this, and see you all next time. Isn't putting a heat pipe easier